Welcome back to another episode of Golden Grade Podcast, and today we're going to talk about framing and using the environment to your advantage. How's it going, everybody? My name's Joe.
And I'm Michael.
And today we are going to talk about framing, rule of thirds, using the environment to your advantage.
Yep.
Do you want to kick us off?
I guess so, yeah. So, we talked about this a couple of times, but when it comes to photography, videography, anything like that, any visual media, it's all about, art, and art requires good framing. If your framing's bad, you're going to have a terrible time. It's going to, you can have the best settings in the world, the best kit in the world, best environment, and lighting could be on point, but if your framing's bad, you're going to have people cut off, it's just not going to be visually appealing, and it's really clear, I think, when you want good framing, you don't want it to be like super duper off kilter or whatever, but it gets a little bit ambiguous and hard to know, especially for a beginner, how to get some key ways to get good framing. So there's a couple of tips and tricks that we're going to talk about, really tried and true ways to get good framing. There's so much more you can do it, and once you know the rules, you'll know how to break them, but it is about art, so we want to talk about how the easy ways to get into good framing, so it's not so such an amorphous topic. So the first thing, there's
a science to it. It's not just kind of like intuition in art. There is a few ways you can do it by learning. It's not all art based.
Well, art is learning, and art is a science, and it's kind of like that. That's the nice thing about our sort of subject is it's kind of a mix of both, and you can take it really artistically, or you can follow some tried and true ways to get good results even if you don't have a very strong artistic sense. So, and you can build that muscle as you go. So the first thing, and you probably heard this before, rule of thirds. This is the most key thing to nail down because it is basically a banger every time. It's really hard to screw up the rule of thirds. Our eyes really like it, and it's everywhere. So do you want to explain what the rule of thirds is?
Yeah, so the rule of thirds, essentially the easiest way to go about it is on your camera or your phone, you can enable a grid. Mm-hmm. Usually it's a 3x3. They have different options and overlays for grids, but 3x3 is the tried and true.
Yep.
Your goal is to align your subjects on the lines. And there is room for play around, especially let's say an interview. You don't want them so far to the right, so you would usually use one of their eyes as a line-up point for where you want them to be. Generally, you want them, whatever subject it is, inanimate person, you want them to be in the crosshairs.
Yeah. Exactly.
How many crosshairs are there? 4?
There's 4 points. Yeah,
4 points.
4 points because if you divide it into thirds, that means that you have 3 quadrants, and you can see 2 lines going each direction, horizontally and vertically, and they intersect at 4 different points. And those are kind of really good places to put your focal point. If you have multiple focal points, they can look good on opposite corners or on a balance like that. Eyes. Super good to put, especially for dynamic photography. Super good to frame your eyes on that right at that crosshair. And in your photo editing software, you can also enable this. So if you took a photo and you want to crop it, always enable a grid. Definitely rule of thirds is a really easy one to go for, so you can actually crop it to that, and it just, even if you're only moving it by a couple centimeters, man, it can make a huge difference because
Absolutely.
Our brains are so wired to look out for threes. It's amazing how immediate that difference can be. And also, you were talking about using that for eyes. That third horizontal line, the top one, is a really good place to put eye level. Mm-hmm. If you don't know how much headroom to give above your subject, if you really don't know what to do, just aim to get their eyes kind of on that horizontal line.
That third line,
yeah. The top line, and that is great framing almost every single time. Assuming the rest of your stuff looks good, that's an easy way to guarantee that it's going to look passable at the very end.
Absolutely. And if you did shoot your material already, your picture, your video, depending on what format, if you did shoot in 4K, you actually have a little bit of wiggle room to get your subject into that thirds, where you can crop it a little bit. But when you're shooting in 1080, it's a little less because then
for video,
it's a little bit, but you can get it to that point, and you will definitely see a difference.
Yeah, and I should say, if you're shooting in photos, hopefully you're shooting in a much higher resolution. On my photo shoots, at about the raw sensor output is 6,000 pixels, so you have some wiggle room even to remain
Absolutely.
in 4K. So definitely take advantage of recropping. If you're not happy, that's okay. Just go back in, try to fix your cropping, and the rule of thirds is a really good way to make sure that your framing is good. So try to enable that grid and try to find that in your photo editor and on your camera.
If you have enough pixels, anything's possible.
Yeah. I mean, that's true. All right. What else do you want to talk about here? Do you want to go into leading lines or?
We'll go into leading lines in a second. I have one more thing to say for thirds. So when it comes to the rule of thirds, I see a lot of people with their landscape photography. I noticed it more in New York, but when they're taking pictures, they line the horizon up with the center. I personally either like to line it up on the top thirds line or the bottom thirds line, because that gives you the option to get some of the landscape in subject while putting a highlight on your sky, or getting your sky in subject and putting a highlight on your landscape. When it's in the center, I feel like it cuts the whole photo in half and doesn't give you that kind of visual aesthetic so you can see the whole picture.
Oh yeah, there is a case to be made for that, only if that's your artistic intent. If you're just trying to...
Well, every rule is meant to be broken.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, you can see those ones where if you're taking a picture of, like, a lake, maybe, and it's perfectly horizontal, that can look really cool if it's splitting it straight in half, but it has to be an artistic decision. If not, if you're taking pictures of mountains, you need more room on the top, and I would highly recommend, like you said, aligning the mountains, the base of the mountains, to the bottom lower third. Now, if you're taking pictures of something really flat, like a field, and you are much more interested, like, in what's going on at the bottom, then again, like, use that thirds. Don't go straight down the middle.
Yeah.
Try that upper thirds, and that'll help you frame that landscape a little bit more pleasing. Just make sure that whatever is taking up the majority of the thirds, the 2/3, I guess, make sure that that is going to be where your subject is.
I got a slogan.
A slogan?
A new slogan for us.
Oh no.
Change your horizon.
Goldengrade podcast.
ASMR.
Change your horizon.
Oh my god, I hated that.
Anyways, well, let's pretend that didn't happen. Let's not say we did. Okay.
So leading lines, you want to run us through a little bit?
Yeah, so leading lines is basically the idea of, like, if you've ever taken an art class, you might have seen, like, perspective lines, you know, like drawing a perspective grid. There's like a Photoshop has a perspective grid. Basically, like, a leading line is a strong line, whether it's a road or a path or a railing or the position that a person is posed in. It's a line that leads your eye through the piece.
The composition, yeah.
So if you have a road and you just have it kind of like trailing off into one corner, it's gonna look a little bit weird.
Yeah.
Because our eyes are really good at edge detection. If you know anything about psychology, edge detection is one of the main things that our eyes look at first glance. So if you have a really strong line going from one side to the other, leading your eye across the frame wherever you want it to lead, if you want it to lead from subject to subject or into the horizon or whatever, leading lines are a really strong way to more dynamically frame your composition.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it depends on your environment too, because leading lines can be anywhere in nature. It's a lot of symmetry. But out in the country or Indiana, as we are currently from right now, but there's cornfields and there's train tracks, and you can find these leading lines in your environment. Fences for pastures.
Fences look so good.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially, it really depends where you're from, because you can line it up with the horizon if you're on a what's it called, on like a beach town city kind of thing.
Yeah.
If you're in like New York City or Chicago, you can line it up with the asphalt, the curbs. You can find leading lines anywhere. And
a lot of it is human made. And I think that there's a YouTuber, his name's James Popsis. You might have seen him. He's a really pretty famous photographer on YouTube, and he talks about how he likes to include human elements, and a lot of those end up being pathways because they're really good at first off telling a story, but also creating a leading line through a path. Paths are really good to lead you because you physically walk down a path, and similarly, you walk down it with your eyes when you look at a photo or a video.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It's really easy to get really strong framing. Sorry, did you have something else to say about that?
Not really. I mean, leading lines, it's just the lines that you see every day that you just don't think about.
Yeah.
If you like just walk across the street, let's say you have telephone lights, you have the horizon, you have buildings, you have what are those yellow lines in the road?
Oh, just like paint lines?
Paint lines, yeah. The paint lines.
The lane dividing lines,
yeah. And even people. I've used people as a leading line into a subject for architecture.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So you can kind of highlight. It doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be inanimate. It can be people too.
Yeah.
There's just so many ways to go about it. I'll definitely post a few of the pictures that I'm referencing on the Facebook and Instagram. But
That'd be good.
Yeah.
And like, use your environment, you know, that if you have your environment, don't let, you know, the subjects that are in your environment just sit there. If you feel like, man, this looks flat, if somebody tells you, man, this is kind of like a boring photo, try to use those things in your environment to your advantage, because they're really helpful. Leading lines are an easy way to use what's in your environment to tell your story in a more impactful way. So that's a really good thing.
Yeah, I've the picture I took recently, I think I showed you with my girlfriend Nico. Yep. We were walking through one of the walking trails where we live.
Trails,
and
dude. I have a fetish for trails. This is no joke. No, I gotta talk about this. Ever since I was a little kid, like trails at night in the forest, well lit with some lamps, dude. The trail that's kind of sort of near here. Oh my goodness, I cry thinking about that. It was so beautiful.
I actually have some compositions that we're gonna talk about on our spooky episode.
I cannot wait.
Yeah, there's for our spooky episode coming up closer to Halloween, as per Michael's request, because it would be ultimate spooky season if it wasn't for him. Look at this. This is all spooky.
Hey, props to Joe on this set design. This is so fun. I'm having a blast with this set design.
I love it.
If you're listening, please, I know if you might not listen on YouTube usually, but please go to the YouTube just to see. This is a super duper fun little spooky set we got going. Anyway, sorry, what?
I don't know what I was talking about.
You're talking about taking pictures of Nico.
The walking trail. So here is a little tip if you are doing photography. Sometimes video, but mostly photography. If you get your camera really low, angle it upwards, you can use the street and like a trail or a path to frame your subject better.
Yeah, I think that this is something I see a lot when it comes to framing, and I'm actually glad you brought that up. People really love to take photos at eye level, which is great. And I do it all the time. I constantly bug you about it.
Yeah.
I think I'm constantly talking about it. But if you're taking like a video, it's like a long form interview, maybe you do want at eye level. But if you're trying to get a nice dynamic look, get down on the floor, dude. Literally get on the floor with your video. You can get some crazy looking B-roll. Get up close with a macro lens. Like, if you get down or get above, you can get some crazy perspectives that not a lot of people see. And I've seen a lot of videos where like people will say that, like professional photographers who like have tons of experience will be like, the first thing that I tell people is like, get down, get up, get more creative shots. Yeah, you need to be as creative as you can. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to break from what we're really used to, which is just kind of staying at that 4 to 6 foot range, being a little bit up, a little bit down from eye level. So yeah, sorry, you can continue with what you're saying. But
no, I finished. But more to your point, a way you can get better is limit yourself. If you have a camera, get a 50 prime. You have one focal length to play with. You have one option. You can only do one distance. So you got to move around. You got to get up. You got to do different things to get that composition you want.
That'll push you.
And even if you don't want to buy 50 prime, you have a variable lens. Just set it to 50 and pretend it's not there.
Yeah, seriously.
That's what you got. You got to play with that.
Yeah.
Make 50 day.
Make 50 day.
50 day.
50 day. I mean, there are sometimes I'll do that. If I'm on a shoot and I want everything to look consistent, I will set my lens to 50 and I'll just go around and I will force myself to move in and out because it'll force you to get a more dynamic look. If you're just sitting in the same spot, taking the same photo with different focal lengths, it's going to look a little bit flat a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And you need to know what your focal length looks like and frame accordingly, so you're going to end up with a much more dynamic style, I think, and that will force you to get up and get down. I remember so at the company we work at, the very first, my interview technically was a video shoot. I wasn't even hired yet. I was doing this on volunteer time. This was my kind of interview. And one of the very first things I did was got a piece of B-roll for the intro, and they had never seen anybody take B-roll before. And I got that wasn't a thing that they did because they didn't have anybody that was like that wasn't their wheelhouse. And I got down on the ground on my stomach outside of the business we were filming at, and because there were some tulips. And I did a focus pull from the tulips to
I think
the
I
sign.
know. I think I know what shoot that is.
You know that shot?
Yeah. Is this involve massages?
Yeah, this is the massage shoot. Yeah.
Okay.
I got down on my stomach and did a focus pull from some tulips in the flower bed.
That was a good shot.
Yeah, it was a really nice shot. And that absolutely blew their mind because, and rightly so, that they never thought about that. And so forcing yourself to get up, get down, change your framing, like it will push you to a level that is much more impressive than just normal to take your camera, walk around and see what you can get. Yeah. So definitely encourage that when it comes to framing for sure.
And we talked a little bit about it, how we're trying to get you guys up to a basically basic intermediate level on the first few episodes. If you can handle getting your camera settings dialed in, you get your lighting somewhat okay. I mean, as long as you have like your basic level lighting, or you have like the sunlight at the right position, and then you have your composition, you can, just from what we've taught you, you probably could do either a short video or take a really good picture.
For sure.
And as we continue, we're going to get into more intermediate stuff. We will every season. I'd like to do some kind of little recap.
Yeah.
But I think the whole purpose of this podcast is to get out and go.
Yeah, for sure.
Do it. You don't have to have all this expensive gear. You have your settings, your phone. Try it out. I mean, it's nothing. It doesn't cost anything if you're using your phone.
That's true.
It only costs you a little bit of time.
Yeah. And honestly, though, like, then this is something I'm thinking about. If you don't know, if you still feel uncomfortable, first off, just go do it. Please just go do it. Like you're saying, like, the best way to learn is to do it. And you just go take as many photos as you possibly can fit in. Take as many videos as you can possibly fit in. But if you still aren't sure, ask people. Don't even ask for a professional artistic opinion. Just be like, does this look good or no? And you will pretty quickly start to realize, like, oh yeah, this framing, like, it can be really hard to understand something like framing. It kind of feels like with camera settings, it's really complicated. There's all sorts of numbers and stuff you don't want to think about. But once you know them, it's simple arithmetic. When it comes to framing, like, understanding like how our brains interpret that can be pretty like hard to, it can be hard to unwrap. And if you ask people, ask other photographers, ask other people who are artistically inclined, ask people who aren't, just, does this look good or not? And ask for honest, real opinions. And if they can tell you why, that will go so far into helping you figure out how to do framing. Because it's not like, this isn't like school. You can't get an A or an F and, you know, like, try to figure out how to do it better from there. You just kind of have to get a feel for it. Best way to get a feel for it is to just do it a crap ton. Just keep doing it. So
here's a little exercise in framing that I'd love you guys to kind of try out. So the first one is with grass and trees. Use the grass and trees to your advantage. Say you're taking a picture of someone in the background. Put your camera or your phone in front of a few blades of grass and use that as your horizon. So it has your subject and then you have the grass in front of your subject. But make sure either you're clicking your phone or you're holding down your
focus lock.
Yeah, your focus, just to get the subject in focus. But having that little bit of distance between what's in the foreground and the background really will change your composition.
Yeah, it'll help a lot.
And another one, streetlights.
Streetlights are great. Take advantage of streetlights.
Cover a third of your camera with the streetlight.
Yeah, you'll get that crazy blur kind of blocking off. It's kind of like a shadow box effect.
Yeah,
super interesting. And like, this is one of those things where you can get some really artistic stuff. And also, I would say when it comes to that, play around with your aperture. Try to see how it affects it with different different apertures, like different amounts of blur. And this goes for video and photo and other visual media. Just like seeing how having something really blocking that frame off like that, like, that can be a really interesting way to get a different composition.
Yeah. So I think we are finally at the questions.
Can I say one more thing?
Oh, of course you can.
There are other things besides the rule of thirds that can help you with framing. There's the golden spiral, the Fibonacci spiral. There are different.
Well, that goes back to the overlays I was telling you about.
I was gonna say, like, you can do lots of different, you can divide your screen up, and like, there are lots of different types of grids. Lightroom has, like, I think 6 or 7. There's like diamond grids. Explore those. Maybe we'll come back around to those later. We say rule of thirds because it is the most surefire and easy to understand way. You can eyeball it IRL, but just keep in mind that there are other framing devices that people like. The golden spiral is a really good one, but there's also like fourths, and there's like diamond patterns. So like, play around with that if you have a Lightroom or whatever photo editor. But just keep that in mind. There are other things that you can use too. So if you feel like you're getting a little bit boring or you're really comfortable with the rule of thirds, you can move on to something else. Anyways, let's do questions.
Okay, questions.
Okay.
So these are just a few little easy questions. What would you, if you had one lens? This was asked by Raka24 on Reddit.
Got it.
If you had one lens, what would it be?
One lens.
One lens for the rest of your life. I
want to say the generic answer, which is a 50 prime, because I freaking like. It's classic. Everybody starts off with the Nifty 50. It's really versatile. It's just a good focal length, but there is another lens that has my heart. There's another focal length that has my heart, and I want to make sure I get it right. I believe it is the Canon R 85 millimeter.
I love the 80s.
Dude, the 85 millimeter is a prime Canon R lens, and
You go with a prime lens for the one lens in your kit?
yes, because I want it to stop down really. If I had infinite budget, I would actually go for the 24 to 75. I think 24 to 70.
I think it's 24 to 70.
So 24 to 70. Because it's a decent range, and it also stops down to I think 2.4.
Yeah.
There's a really loud plane going over.
Meow. But that's actually not a terrible choice. You would be surprised by mine because you know I like my distance.
Yeah, I guess I would be surprised. What are you gonna go for?
35 prime.
You're gonna go for a 35 prime?
Yeah.
Why?
I feel like a 35 hits everything you need to. I mean, you're gonna have to move around and stuff, but a 35 prime is perfect.
For photo, I can understand that. You do a lot more photo than me. I do a lot of video, and I really need some flexibility. So I could see that.
Well, the flexibility is nice, but I feel like you can capture a lot with a 35 and a gimbal.
I mean, you can. Yeah, I mean, 35 is a great range, 50 is a great range, and 85 is maybe a little bit. 85 is a real trick lens, honestly. So that was my original answer. It is a really nice looking lens, but it's a lot more special. Honestly, if I was to build out a kit, probably 85 would be the last thing that I would acquire. But it is my favorite looking lens, and it is my favorite to use prime wise. It is just such a sexy lens.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the 24 to right now I have the 24 to 105 4.0 Canon R lens, and it's a really, really, really good lens for video. It is so versatile. It's good glass, and it's just really nice to use, and has a huge range for video. But it can't stop down that low. It's 4.0 is not that low for photos, and the 24.
Yeah.
The 24
well, you could get a
70,
2.8 version.
Yeah, well, no, but it's a slightly different focus. Well, yeah, I mean, like the 24 to 70 stops down to, I think, like 2.2 or 2.8.
Is it?
2. Is really, really
Yeah,
low.
it's 2.8, I thought. There's a 4.0 and the 2.8. I mean, that's
not 24 to 105.
Yeah, the 24 to 105. Oh, no, you're talking about the today. Yeah, okay.
So that would be my answer. Is the 24 to 70, 2.8 or whatever it is. I've held that lens. I've used it. I've never owned it. So I'm not. But it was. It also, that thing is the biggest thing I've ever held in my life. It is literally twice the weight of my camera body.
Yeah, it's heavy. I think it's 88 millimeter or something.
Yeah, it's like 88 millimeters. It's huge. But that huge glass, it looks incredible on video. It is one of the most incredible video lenses I've ever used. There are better cinema lenses, obviously, but it is a lot more cinematic than the whatever size lens we have right now. So
yeah.
Anyways, yeah, that might be my answer. Sorry, we took too long.
So for the second question, this one's a little long. It's a little winded. Why do you take this? Let me say who submitted it first, and then I'll go into the question.
Okay.
So this is a Reddit user, Arthur what is that, underscore?
Yeah.
Underscore unknown. Why do you take photographs? What do you do with them? At the end of the day, it's just gigabytes worth of visually similar images that only I and a few others will see. So what's the point? And how could I turn this pointless hobby into something more fulfilling?
Okay, that's a great question. If it's not your job, it's kind of hard to explain why you would make art.
You have to have a passion for it.
Yeah, it's because, and for me, it's to tell a story. I love telling stories. I like getting people out there. I like seeing something visually interesting. Every photo is a story. Every frame of video is a story, and I really enjoy telling stories. So for me, it's having a creative output, even if nobody sees it, even if you purposely make sure that nobody sees it. I know people who paint and they don't show anybody, and that just brings joy because the human mind is really wired to be creative. And even if you aren't a very artistic person, which I think that's bullcrap. I think everybody has artistic vein in them, but I think that is vital, and I think that everybody should create something in some way, shape, or form. And for me, photo and video, even if nobody ever sees it, I just love doing it. Like, I've done vlogs before, and it is just so fulfilling. and fun to tell my story and make it look good. And even if like 45 people see it, I don't really care.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I get a little bit more views than that usually, but it's just really fun. And like with this podcast too, it's just really,
it's fun to put yourself out there. I find, I mean, at least for photography, it's a little different. I like to have those photos. I love to cherish those experiences.
documentation.
Sometimes I go out and just do a photo shoot with my girlfriend, but for the most part, it's like, oh, we went to Comic-Con. Oh, we went to a skate park, a theme park. We went to Kings Island, or we went to all these places. I want to have photos showing what we did and that we had a great time. And I want those photos to look good.
Yeah.
I want it to be.
It's nice that they look good.
Yeah. I mean, that's also an artistic standpoint. I think they look good. Someone might say that's the worst photo I've ever seen in my life, but you know, it's nice to have the ability to take good photos. I would say if you're not feeling fulfilled from it, try something new. You're saying that all your photos are similar. Maybe you're taking landscape, try portrait.
Yeah.
Maybe you're taking portrait, try landscape.
Try some abstract stuff too.
Yeah.
You never know. Just get weird with it, man. Ruin it. Just take the sliders in Lightroom, just jack it up, make it look really weird. You'll get some cool results.
Turn off all your lights, light a Bic lighter, and take a photo.
Yeah.
That was a really big inspiration for me. That was one of my first photos.
Yeah. I want to add to that real quick. Like 4 years ago, I took no photos. When I met my girlfriend, she took a ton of photos, and I didn't understand why. And now my camera roll is full of photos. I have I have tens of thousands of photos now in the past 3 years, and I go through them all the time. And it is really nice to be able to see that. I don't post any of them on social media; they're just for me. But I try to make them look good, and it's really nice to be able to go back and look. So, anyways.
Okay. Well, this is the next segment.
Okay.
Would you rather?
What would I rather, Joe?
We get a lot of views on these would you rathers.
Okay, yeah. I mean, no pressure or anything.
All right, so you ready?
I guess so.
All right, so would you rather?
Yep.
Would you rather only shoot 5-second exposures or longer, or only at 800 millimeters? You can only shoot long exposure or massive focal
Joe, I know
range.
it's spooky season, but am I in hell?
Yeah, a little bit.
I've got to say 800 millimeters because...
Really? Back up.
When's the
Back
last time you took a 5-second exposure? If you will only ever be able to take really artistic photos or be able to take something where your subject is really still. I would not be able to take like any of my photos.
I have a long exposure idea for our spooky episode.
Okay.
I'm very excited. It involves ghosts. But
what would you do?
What, with a 5-second exposure or 800 millimeter?
Yeah, what would you do?
I don't know.
That's awful. This is the worst question you've asked me.
Is it really? I mean, I don't know. It depends. There's the one guy out there who takes like astral photography, and he's like, this is the easiest question I've ever gotten in my life.
For us laymen, us normal people, us plebes. Yeah, I mean, I've got to go with 800 millimeters because I know at least I'll be able to get what I want. And also, it's easier to get depth of field in a nice photo with the longer.
I hope your photography studio is a parking lot. Because that is the 800 millimeters is ridiculous.
800 millimeters is honestly entirely unreasonable. Like if we were shooting this podcast at 800 millimeters, you'd be able to see my nose.
And the same thing with the bird person. He was like, oh, absolutely, 800 millimeters.
There's some wildlife photographer out there who's what even is this question? This is the dumbest thing they've ever said.
5-second exposure. I can't get a hummingbird at 5 seconds.
If you got a hummingbird at 5 seconds, it would just be a blob.
It would be a dead hummingbird.
Wow, yikes. Yeah. Only one kind of hummingbird you can take a photo of at 5-second exposure. Oof. Yeah, I've got to go with 800 millimeters, unfortunately.
800. Okay. Well, you said it was the hardest question, but it easily, you picked out one out the fastest.
I don't feel good about it.
All right. I think that's it. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for joining us for episode 4, and we can't wait to see you next week.
Absolutely. We'll see you guys later.
Bye.